Some crimes leave behind a trail of evidence. Footprints in the mud, a careless fingerprint, a forgotten weapon. But some cases defy logic, sending chills down the spines of even the most hardened investigators. Today, on Chilling Mysteries, we're diving into 5 terrifying cases where the killers vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions, shattered families, and a legacy of fear. These are the stories that keep detectives awake at night and haunt the collective memory of entire communities. Prepare yourself as we explore 5 chilling cases where killers disappeared without a trace. Let's begin with one of the most infamous unsolved mysteries in modern American history, the disappearance of the Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the San Francisco Bay Area was gripped by terror. The Zodiac Killer taunted police and the press with cryptic letters, codes, and chilling confessions, claiming responsibility for a string of brutal murders. His victims were ordinary people, young couples parked in lovers' lanes, a lone cab driver, a student on her way home. The killer's boldness was matched only by his elusiveness. Despite his taunts and the massive manhunt that followed, the Zodiac was never caught. One of the most unsettling elements of the Zodiac case was the way he played with authorities. He sent letters filled with ciphers, some of which remain unsolved to this day. He threatened to target school buses, sparking widespread panic. The media became his unwitting accomplice, amplifying his threats and giving him the notoriety he seemed to crave. Yet, for all his bravado, he left remarkably little physical evidence. Descriptions from surviving victims were inconsistent, and fingerprints lifted from his letters yielded no matches. The few clues he left, a blood-stained cab, shell casings, cryptic codes, only deepened the mystery. The Zodiac's last confirmed letter arrived in 1974, and then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. Was he arrested for another crime? Did he die? Or did he simply lose interest in his deadly game? Over the decades, hundreds of suspects have been investigated, teachers, military veterans, even a convicted child molester. Books, documentaries, and amateur sleuths have tried to crack the case, but the true identity of the Zodiac remains an enigma. For the families of the victims, and for the Bay Area itself, the lack of closure is a wound that never truly heals. The Zodiac's legacy endures not only because of his crimes, but because he became the ultimate phantom, a killer who vanished without a trace. Moving across the Atlantic, we encounter another baffling case that has haunted Ireland for decades, the brutal murder of Rayonade Murray. On the night of September 3, 1999, 17-year-old Rayonade was walking home through her quiet neighborhood in South Dublin. She was just a few hundred yards from her front door when someone attacked her, stabbing her multiple times. Despite being so close to home, no one saw or heard the attack. Rayonade was found by neighbors in the early morning hours, her life cut tragically short. The investigation into Rayonade's murder was massive. Detectives interviewed over 2,000 people and followed up on hundreds of leads. The community was gripped by fear. Who could have done this, and why? Theories abounded. Was it a random act of violence, a spurned lover, or someone with a personal vendetta? Yet despite the exhaustive efforts of law enforcement, no suspect has ever been arrested. No murder weapon was ever found. The killer left no fingerprints, no DNA, and, it seemed, no motive. Rayonade's family has never given up hope of finding justice. They've made repeated public appeals, urging anyone with information to come forward. Over 2 decades later, her case remains one of Ireland's most haunting unsolved murders. The killer, whoever they are, walked away from the scene and disappeared into the shadows, leaving a family and a nation forever changed. Rayonade's story is a reminder that evil can strike anywhere, and that sometimes the monsters among us are never found. Our next case takes us to the rugged wilderness of Alaska, a place known for its vast, unforgiving landscapes and its dark, bloody secrets. In the early 1980s, Anchorage was gripped by fear as young women began to vanish without a trace. Many of them were sex workers or dancers, women whose disappearances were often ignored by the authorities. But one detective, Glenn Flood, began to see a pattern. He suspected that a serial killer was preying on vulnerable women, luring them into the wild, and hunting them like animals. The case broke open in 1983, when a woman named Cindy Paulson escaped from a man who had held her captive. She described her abductor as a soft-spoken baker named Robert Hansen. Police searched Hansen's home and found a cache of weapons, jewelry belonging to missing women, and an aviation map marked with tiny X's, suspected burial sites. Hansen was arrested, confessed to killing at least 17 women, and was sentenced to life in prison. Case closed, or so it seemed. But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. Even after Hansen's arrest, several women who were believed to be victims of the so-called butcher baker were never found. And in the years since, other disappearances have occurred that bear an eerie resemblance to Hansen's modus operandi. Some believe that Hansen was not acting alone, that another killer, or perhaps multiple killers, were operating in the same area. Others speculate that the vastness of Alaska makes it the perfect place for someone to vanish without a trace, whether victim or killer. To this day, the full extent of the Anchorage murders remains unknown. The wilderness has swallowed the secrets of many, and the possibility that other killers may still be at large continues to haunt investigators. In Alaska, the line between hunter and hunted is razor thin, and sometimes, the most dangerous predators are the ones who get away. Now let's travel to Japan, where one of the country's most infamous unsolved crimes remains a source of national fascination and dread. On December 30, 2000, the Miyazawa family was brutally murdered in their home in the Setagaya ward of Tokyo. The killer entered the house sometime after midnight, stabbing all 4 family members to death, including 2 young children. But what makes this case truly bizarre is what happened next. After committing the murders, the killer didn't flee immediately. Instead, he stayed in the house for several hours. He ate ice cream from the family's freezer, used their computer, and even took a nap on the living room sofa. He left behind a wealth of evidence, a bloody fingerprint, feces in the toilet, and personal items including clothes, a bag, and a knife. DNA tests indicated that the killer was of mixed East Asian and European descent, possibly from a country near the Mediterranean. Yet despite this mountain of clues, the police were unable to identify him. The Setagaya murders shocked Japan, a country with one of the world's lowest homicide rates. The police investigation was one of the largest in Japanese history, with over 246,000 investigators involved at one point. Hundreds of suspects were questioned, and the case was featured in media across the globe. But every lead ended in a dead end. The killer had vanished, leaving behind a puzzle that has stumped law enforcement for more than 2 decades. For the surviving relatives of the Miyazawa family, the lack of answers is a source of lasting pain. Each year, on the anniversary of the murders, they make public appeals for information, hoping that someone, somewhere, knows the truth. The Setagaya killer has become a ghost story for modern Japan, a reminder that even the most meticulous investigations can fail, and that some killers are never brought to justice. Our final case takes us to the windswept moors of England, where the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence remains one of the UK's most perplexing mysteries. Claudia was a 35-year-old chef living in the city of York. On March 18, 2009, she spoke to her parents by phone, made plans to meet a friend, and then, sometime during the night or early morning, vanished without a trace. Her car was parked outside her house, her purse and passport were inside. There were no signs of a struggle. The investigation into Claudia's disappearance quickly became one of the largest in North Yorkshire police history. Detectives combed through thousands of hours of CCTV footage, interviewed friends, colleagues, and former lovers, and followed up on more than 2,000 leads. Rumors swirled about secret relationships, jealous lovers, and the possibility of a stalker. Several men were arrested on suspicion of murder, but all were released without charge. To this day, there is no physical evidence, no body, no weapon, no definitive clue as to what happened to Claudia. Her father, Peter Lawrence, became a tireless advocate for missing persons and campaigned for changes in the law to help families of the disappeared. He passed away in 2021, never knowing what happened to his daughter. For the people of York, Claudia's disappearance is a constant reminder that evil can lurk in the most ordinary places, and that sometimes, the answers simply never come. What unites these 5 cases is not just the brutality of the crimes, but the utter vanishing act performed by the killers. In each instance, the perpetrators slipped through the cracks, sometimes leaving clues, sometimes leaving nothing at all. The Zodiac Killer became a legend, his identity the subject of endless speculation. Rayonade Murray's killer destroyed a family and a community, then disappeared into the Dublin night. The wilds of Alaska swallowed the secrets of the butcher baker and possibly others, while the Setagaya murderer left a trail of evidence that somehow led nowhere. And Claudia Lawrence's fate remains unknown, her disappearance a wound that refuses to heal. Why do some killers get away while others are caught? Is it meticulous planning, dumb luck, or simply the right set of circumstances? In some cases, investigators made mistakes, evidence was lost, leads went cold, and witnesses were overlooked. In others, the killers exploited gaps in technology or law enforcement resources. And sometimes, the world is simply too big, too chaotic, for every crime to be solved. These unsolved cases haunt the collective imagination because they remind us of our own vulnerability. We like to believe that justice always prevails, that monsters are found and punished. But the truth is more unsettling. Sometimes, the monsters walk among us, unseen and unpunished. Sometimes, they vanish without a trace, leaving behind only nightmares and unanswered questions. For the families left behind, the pain of not knowing is often worse than the crime itself. The not knowing becomes a shadow that follows them for the rest of their lives. Every phone call, every knock on the door brings hope and dread. Every anniversary, every news story is a reminder that the story isn't over, that justice has not been served. But these cases also remind us of the tenacity of those who search for the truth. The detectives who never give up, the families who keep fighting, the journalists and amateur sleuths who refuse to let the stories fade away. They remind us that even in the darkest mysteries, there is always someone searching for the light. If you found these stories as chilling as we did, don't forget to subscribe to Chilling Mysteries for more true crime content that delves into the world's most baffling and terrifying cases. Let us know in the comments which unsolved mystery haunts you the most, or if there's a case you want us to cover next. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, sometimes, the scariest mysteries are the ones that never get solved.